for them mentally, but also the performance, I suppose, will be highly praised, and another win for Rosenior as well.
Yeah, firstly, Jess, I thought it was a brilliant night of Champions League action, and it's perhaps to some a vindication of the new Swiss-style format. It's been a bit of a slow burner. There haven't been sort of absolutely belting games every week. There has been jeopardy along the way, and we'll probably talk about it more compared to the previous format. But as for Chelsea, that's fantastic for Liam Rosenior. Absolutely brilliant start to his life as a Chelsea head coach. I think he lost to Arsenal in the League Cup semi-final first leg, but other than that, he's been pretty much unblemished, and he's now on a nice winning run. The players seem to be playing in a formation that suits them, despite some injuries in there. They're fluid. They seem happy. João Pedro's goals were absolutely sensational, and I thought Cole Palmer, off the bench but getting back to fitness, is just a total class act. The way he set João Pedro up for the second goal. It wasn't a perfect night. It was really poor defending for the first Napoli goal, and the second one wasn't great either, and some concerns in that central defensive position where Chelsea are looking to strengthen before the transfer window shuts. But the way they came through against the Napoli side that hadn't lost at home in any competition since early December of 2024. So that's like 13 months. Antonio Conte against his former club. He's not got a great record in European competition at club level, but he is a top coach, and Chelsea will be absolutely buzzing to get through to the knockout stage get through to the next stage without having to face a playoff. So yeah, it's all looking good for Liam Rosenior, and he's got other big tasks on the horizon with West Ham at the weekend, but also the second leg against Arsenal coming up too.
Yeah, exactly that, Martin. That's 4 wins in a row for this Chelsea side now. Momentum is really important in football, isn't it? And they'll hope to carry this on in the Premier League.
Yeah, of course they will. And because, that League Cup against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago, that obviously they're on the back foot from that. So I think this will be hugely confidence building. And Napoli, as David said, is really, really strong team. They're not even going to be in the knockouts for the Champions League now, Napoli. So disastrous result for them. But for Chelsea, it's, I think they needed something. They needed a new start. They needed to freshen up, and it looks like they've got it.
Yeah, it really does. We're just seeing the back page of the Daily Telegraph here with the headline, "It's an English high five." That's because, so many Premier League teams, of the 6 that were going for it, 5 have made it through automatically. It's just Newcastle that missed out on that automatic spot. They'll go through the playoffs in February. I wonder for Man City, though, with that important win against Galatasaray, just sneaking in 8th place there, they really, I felt, needed that win after it's been a bit of a topsy-turvy time, David, in the Premier League for them.
It's not been a good start to the calendar year for Manchester City, and they've also, like many other clubs, suffered their injury problems. They've invested in this market. They've not been able to use Semenyo and Mark Gahey in Europe yet. They will in the next phase. But yeah, that was a really significant step to, at the last second, get into the last 16 with the Benfica headed goal by their goalkeeper, which is an astonishing moment in football. It really was. The drama in it involved Jose Mourinho, of course, as well. But yeah, Manchester City will be elated because, of course, this time last year they nearly got knocked out entirely. They scraped through and then faced Real Madrid and got knocked out. So their Champions League campaign ended in February, and now they won't have to play that extra 2-legged tie, which is a boost for them in domestic competition, and they can look forward to challenging for Champions League honours again. Erling Haaland back on the score sheet, of course, and they look pretty good. So yeah, Manchester City will be thrilled with that.
And after Pep Guardiola, Martin, called his side fragile, they looked pretty robust tonight, didn't they?
Yeah, maybe not the strongest opposition, but we can see with other teams of they like Real Madrid. It's easy to slip up against the teams you're expected to beat, and it can be very costly. I mean, what we're actually seeing though with Real Madrid is they're going to be a potentially really, really tricky opponent for one of those 5 English clubs who finished in the top 8. And if Real Madrid get through the playoffs, and you think they probably will, then nobody's going to play them in the last 16. We saw with Liverpool and PSG last season, similar sort of scenario. Liverpool finished top of the Champions League table, had to play PSG, who'd been in the playoffs, ended up losing, and obviously PSG went on to win the whole tournament.
Yeah, remember, remarkable scenes. Okay, let's move on to Tottenham Hotspur, 2-0 winners at Eintracht Frankfurt. And considering what's happening to them in the Premier League at the moment, and considering the intense scrutiny that their head coach, Thomas Frank, is under, David, what does this result do for that pressure on the head coach?
It alleviates it somewhat, Jess. They've won both of their European matches this year, 2-0. Obviously, Dortmund at home was really impressive last week and followed it up with the dominant performance in Frankfurt. Despite the fact that Frankfurt have been dreadful this season, that's still a big win, and Tottenham deserved it. It could have been by more. They hit the post through Odegaard earlier on in the match, and to see Kolo Muani after that car accident playing and scoring will be really pleasing for them. And also Dominic Solanke, who's been out injured for so long and is working his way back in. That was a tremendous finish. But of course, the story is Thomas Frank. And not only does he live on, but he seems to be getting a bit stronger. They're the fourth best team in Europe if you look at it on paper. And so maybe that will quieten the doubters a little bit. It feels like it's going game to game at the moment. And obviously, after the Dortmund match, they then were held to a draw at Burnley. And a lot of the fan base seems to have turned against him. But the club, the hierarchy, the ownership seem to have faith in him. They want him to succeed. There's a lot of goodwill for him to do so. They're sticking with him when many thought he was going to get sacked or on the brink. And in terms of the continental competition, he seems to be repaying that faith. But they do need to show it domestically as well. And they've got Manchester City on Sunday. I'm going to be there. That's another massive test. And then I think it's Newcastle and Arsenal, Man United. So it's a horrific run of fixtures. But if they can pick up some results, it's starting to look very different for Thomas Frank and Spurs. But they need to, because their league place is unacceptable for a second season in a row. But Europe was the salvation under Ange Postecoglou. Will it be again for Frank?
Yeah, 14th in the Premier League table as it stands, 8 points clear of the relegation zone, Martin. What do you feel that this does in terms of the pressure on the head coach, Thomas Frank?
I mean, of course, it's gonna help, but I still think the Premier League is where that's your bread and butter. And if you're going to be down in 14th spot after a similarly very poor Premier League performance last season, that's not going to be good enough for the fans. Not going to be good enough for the people who run the club. Whatever. I mean, perhaps it shows more the relative strength of the Premier League compared to the rest of Europe, because we know that it's the richest league, it's the most successful league financially. They can pay just about the most amount of money. So perhaps the English clubs should be finishing in or close to the top 8. So Spurs doing that, it shouldn't be too unexpected. But I think it's the comparison, obviously, with the league form, which is distinctive. But I think they need now to translate that into Premier League success and turning the season around for it to be meaningful.
So whilst it was a pretty successful night for the majority of the Premier League clubs, there is one team that did not make it into the top 8. That is Newcastle. They'll go through the playoffs. As reporting on Sky Sports here, Newcastle heading for playoffs after draw at PSG. Now, David, if you look at the result, the fact that they went to the Parc des Princes, they went to the reigning champions and drew 1-1, that in of itself is relatively impressive. But they haven't made the top 8 and their Premier League form isn't the greatest either. I mean, will there be some unrest amongst the fans about this?
I don't think so, Jess. I mean, they went there 2 years ago. They had a 1-1 draw, or 2022, I think it was, and they've done that again tonight. The performance was pretty strong. They will feel they should have had a penalty for what looked like a handball by Marquinhos. I don't know if it was reviewed by the VAR, but certainly it felt harsh when they were. PSG were awarded a penalty in the first half for a handball too. And then there were chances. Harvey Barnes could have could have won it for Newcastle, and the fact that they came back in the Parc des Princes against the reigning champions, who had 8 of the starting finalists last season, and are such a strong team. They've got many players who were nominated for the Ballon d'Or and the sort of team of the year, and Newcastle held their own. They've made it through. They've got to the playoff phase, and the playoff match I think is going to be against Monaco or Karabag, so they'll fancy their chances against either of those. It has been an inconsistent season for Newcastle, certainly away from home. They've been better at home, but then they had that defeat by Aston Villa at the weekend. There's been a lot of scrutiny again on their recruitment, and Eddie Howe talking about PSR. So it doesn't feel that all is completely well there, but they're doing okay in the European competition, and they'll hope to progress further. So I don't think the Newcastle fans will be too disappointed tonight.
Yeah, we just saw back page of the Times there, top 8 heartbreak for Newcastle. Martin, I wonder about the number of games Newcastle have played already and will have to play now as extra, because they're going into this playoff, particularly with injuries and player welfare a concern. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a concern. I mean, actually, quite an unusual sort of team selection by Eddie Howe. I think may have surprised a few people, but actually played it. They played very well. David's right. That Marquinhos handball, I couldn't believe that didn't go to VAR. I thought that was a clear penalty for them. Nick Pope, a brilliant save to save PSG's penalty, and a really good team performance all round. Had a few chances, actually. Probably would end up being slightly disappointed that they're going to have to play these extra 2 games, but maybe that's why Eddie Howe had that in the back of his mind. He thought he was going to sort of maybe give some players a bit of a rest, because he knows they've got a really tough end of the season to come.
Yeah, they really have. Okay. I think we'll leave it there for now. We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll look at more of the night's European football, because what a night it was. Wins as well for Arsenal and Liverpool, who we'll come to. And we'll also see how the papers are covering Raheem Sterling leaving Chelsea. It's made the Guardian sports headlines. More on him next. Hello again, you're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to Martin Ziegler, Chief Sports Reporter for The Times, and the Athletics football correspondent, David Ornstein. OK, we're going to just pause on the Champions League football for a moment. Staying with Chelsea, though, because Raheem Sterling is making the headlines. Now, interestingly, on the back page of the Guardian, Sterling seeks fresh start after ending contract early. So Chelsea getting rid of Raheem Sterling by mutual consent, despite him still having 18 months left on his contract. I'm sure Chelsea will be pleased that they've got one of their biggest earners off the books. But for Raheem Sterling, he's now out of work. But David, I wonder, is this an opportunity for him now to revive his career, and where might he go?
Well, I think Garden, as you said, was probably more appropriate for where Raheem Sterling has been recently, because he certainly hasn't been on the pitch for Chelsea, although he has been training just separately to the main group. And knowing Raheem Sterling, he'll still be in really good shape. At Arsenal last season, he just didn't get as many game time opportunities as you might have expected, and when he didn't deliver. I think it was only 1 goal he scored for them in the League Cup, but he's just 31 years old, and so this is a great chance for him to join another club as a free agent. It may be in London. I would suspect that's his preference for family reasons, and he's been linked with the likes of West Ham, Fulham, Crystal Palace and so on, but it may need to be further afield if the options in the capital aren't available. So whether that's within the Premier League or he does seek pastures new abroad. And I think for him, security is quite a big issue. He's been subject to 2, I'm sure, extremely distressing home robberies. You'll remember the first of those when he was at the World Cup in 2022, Qatar, and he's not really played for England since then. And it's been a downward spiral. A remarkable transfer. It was the best part of £50 million from Manchester City, one of the leading players for club and country, £325,000 a week. I think it was the first signing of the Todd Boehly Clear Lake Capital regime at Stamford Bridge. But then it wasn't too long before he fell out of favour and wasn't playing at all. And under Enzo Maresca, he was deemed completely surplus to requirements in the so-called bomb squad, and now he's a Chelsea player no longer. So it's a good opportunity for somebody out there, or a number of clubs to look at. They'll obviously have considerations around the salary. He'll have to think about that as well. But I would suggest there's plenty of miles left in the tank, and I look forward to seeing Raheem Sterling back in action in not too long.
Yeah, you say miles in the tank. I feel like I've been watching him all my life. The fact that he's only 31 is absolutely incredible. But Martin, we know that there's been interest from clubs in London, like Palace, like Fulham, but he hadn't joined them, or he didn't show any reciprocal interest in those clubs. So he's running out of options if it's a London club that he wants, isn't he?
I think he was looking for. I think what he wanted was some sort of stability and security, and having like a longer term deal. So he wanted like 2 years basically. I think he wanted to feel it's something to get his teeth into, and I think he's actually prepared to move abroad. He knows lots of English players have had success in Italy, and that's something he would definitely look at, and would move his family if it was the right sort of deal. But as is, not just a year. I think he'd want to have at least 2 years, and feels that he's still got a lot to offer. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, London. If there was a London club prepared to give him a decent contract, he would probably choose that first. But don't think he's going to shut down any options at all.
So, David, you don't feel perhaps that his wages will be a hindrance here?
It's something he'll have to consider if the opportunities that arise are blocked, or there's some problems around what that club or those clubs are able or willing to pay for him. And I suspect he would adjust his expectations accordingly, because I don't think he'll easily be getting that contract elsewhere, given how little he's been playing recently. And when he was at Arsenal, it wasn't sort of the most impressive stint. I think that was affected by how late it happened, the Arsenal move. And now, as Martin quite rightly talks about, some stability to go somewhere where he's really wanted, and it's not just the last minute thing that he's propelled into, some real thought over where the style, the coach, the environment for him and his family. And he'll walk away, I'm sure, with a decent settlement. Chelsea will feel that they've made some savings, and it's probably the best outcome for all parties. On what turned into a bit of a sorry episode, it's really interesting how it evolved at Chelsea, because they were initially, on both him and Koulibaly, paying big transfer fees and salaries, and then it all of a sudden got switched to much longer but smaller wages, and that's what Chelsea are trying to do on younger players, and that's maybe reflecting a bit of a shift in sort of who's running the show at ownership level at Stamford Bridge. And that was a chapter that I think Raheem Sterling will look back on with mixed feelings, and now it will be trying to find a much better fit than that proved to be.
Yeah, what a remarkable career he's had already, and we'll wait to see where the next stage of his career plays out. And of course, less than a week to go now until transfer deadline day here on Sky Sports News. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that one. Let's talk about one of his former clubs then, a team that he knows very well indeed, Raheem Sterling, and that's Arsenal. We already knew that they were through automatically to the last 16 stage of the Champions League. But after a 3-2 win against Kairat, I should say, it's now 8 wins from 8 in the Champions League. Martin, they look absolutely formidable in this competition.
Yeah, I think although they'd already got that top 2 place sewn up, I think they were absolutely determined to go out and get that 100% record complete for the group stage, and they did. They were playing against the bottom club, Kairat, in the Champions League table, so not the most difficult of matches to finish with. But they will be very pleased that they came through, and also Kai Havertz back, scoring, making goals. He's been out for such a long time, and for him to come back at this time of the season could be really, really important. So I think there'll be lots of pluses for the Gunners tonight.
And good night for Kai Havertz. Good night as well for Victor Gyökeres, David. After scoring at Inter, he got himself on the score sheet again tonight.
Yeah, he's done well in Europe, and the goals are starting to creep up now for Victor Gyökeres. Clearly, there's been a lot of scrutiny over how he fits into the team, how Arsenal adapt to him, and they're all still learning. There were better signs tonight, admittedly against very weak opposition. In terms of that goal, it was excellent. He did miss a couple of chances, the second of which was tapped in by Martinelli. But he continues to find his feet. It's still relatively early days. Arsenal weren't used to playing with a 9 like him. Maybe there's a little partnership to be struck up there with Kai Havertz if he can maintain his fitness. Arsenal would have just wanted to get back to winning ways, wrap up top spot, and now they've got a massive assignment at Leeds on Saturday, and that's going to be another big moment for Gyökeres, you would suspect. But he is growing into it, and Arsenal have a lot of faith in him. They'll need to. He's crucial as they continue to challenge on 4 fronts.
Yeah, not much left of the show to go, but Martin, I want to talk about Liverpool because they absolutely smashed Qarabağ 6-0, which, given their recent form, isn't necessarily a given against so-called lesser opposition, but a good performance. But if there is one negative from this evening and their performance, was that another defensive injury in Jeremy Frimpong.
Yeah, that would have been the last thing they wanted to see, him limping off. But on the other positive side, though, 6-0, absolutely tremendous result for them. So I think, yes, pluses and minuses. We don't know about the extent of the injury yet, but they could certainly do without another one when they've got entering this critical time of the season. But I think they will look at this and think, this is the sort of performance that Liverpool have been needing to have for some time, just to get themselves back in the groove. And this could be really important.
Yeah, so all in all then, a really impressive night for the Premier League and the English teams in the Champions League. 5 of the 6 going through to the knockout stages automatically. Just Newcastle, after drawing at PSG, will go via the playoffs. What a night of Champions League football. Martin Ziegler, David Ornstein, an absolute pleasure to have your company here on Back Pages tonight. Thank you very much. Now, if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour, and the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.